Hey everyone, my name is Wes, and welcome back to another episode of Terror Talk where I discuss creepy clips online. I created this original horror music to add to the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave your own comments, and when you're done watching, check the description if you'd like to listen to my music without the commentary. Now let's get into it and have some fun.
My name is Kevin. I've been a trucker for varying companies for the better part of 15 years now. Things have become pretty routine at this point. Pick up the goods and materials, verify them for accuracy, and deliver them as instructed. We're not paid by the hour, so efficiency is the most important thing in this line of work. For someone like me who's been doing this forever, I like to think I can outwork all these young guns that are snapping these jobs up. This isn't always great, though. Usually I push myself to the absolute limit when it comes to functioning on barely any sleep. 4 years ago, I was working for a warehouse.
I didn't know truckers weren't paid hourly. I didn't know that. But are you the same way? Do you thrive off routine? Because I certainly do. Let me know in the comments below if you do really well with routine or you need a lot of spontaneity in your life. I like to ask these types of questions in the videos to get to know my viewers and who's watching, but let me know in the comments below if you like routine or spontaneity.
Warehouse based in North Dakota. For anyone who doesn't know, North Dakota is one of the flattest states, which makes trucking a little easier. This also meant that skipping out on a few hours of sleep could mean the difference between employment and getting the sack. It was a chilly Tuesday morning in May. The beginning of the week meant that more loads needed to be shipped, which meant more work for me. I wanted to knock it all out in one shot, so I traced my route into Montana accordingly, planning on not stopping even once to sleep. I hit the road a few hours after lunch, expecting to reach my destination very early the next morning. I pushed the semi as much as possible, doing maybe a couple over the speed limit. It was getting late, and I remember rubbing the crust from my eyelids as the clock ticked past midnight. I was having trouble keeping my eyes open, but I only had about an hour left in this drive, so I gritted my teeth and kept going. My buddy Tristan, who was also a trucker, introduced me to smelling salts when I first started out. If you don't know, smelling salts are basically some kind of crystals in a little bottle. One sniff and you're wide awake. You had to be careful though. Too many back-to-back uses could be dangerous, or at least that's what Tristan told me. They burn your nose a little bit, but whenever I needed a boost...
It almost sounds like drugs, doesn't it? Like these little salt things. Yeah, I've never heard of that before, have you? Kinda weird.
I'd reach for the smelling salts first. This was one of those times. I took a big whiff and shot my head back, my reflexes taking over. I felt the adrenaline course through my body, and I hoped the feeling would last the rest of the drive. A half hour shot by, and I was really struggling. I felt myself start to doze off, and the blare of my truck drifting into the shoulder jolted me awake. This was getting dangerous, I thought. I had to pull off. I was all alone on the highway, but there was nowhere to pull off. There was just woods on either side of me. I slowed the truck down, searching desperately for somewhere to pull over. At this low speed, my headlights pierced through the darkness and I was able to see a lot more. As I looked around, I saw something that confused me. There was a purple dress lying in the middle of the road. What the hell? I thought, rubbing my eyes. Was I hallucinating? I blinked like 6 times just to make sure I wasn't going crazy. It was real. I approached the dress with my truck and stared at it as I rolled by. In hindsight, this should have been more of a red flag, but I think I was just too exhausted to process what was going on. About 200 or so yards away, I passed a pair of shoes. Now I was starting to freak out. What the hell was going on? I passed the shoes, praying to God there would be a place to pull off soon.
Yeah, this would be pretty creepy and strange, wouldn't it? Just to find all these clothes lying there on the middle of the road like that. I mean, if I ever saw anything like that, I would keep driving. I wouldn't stop because this is clearly a trap.
My old man, David, was a super religious guy, so I clutched his old cross and hoped he would come through for me. A little further up the road, I saw a bunch more random clothing, some of which looked like little kids' clothing. This time I stopped the truck. The panic started to set in. Something was very, very wrong. I sat in the driver's seat with the truck at a standstill. I was expecting something to happen, but it never did. So I did what my instincts told me to do. I stepped out of the truck and went to inspect the clothing. I still remember the feeling of the chilly morning air piercing my skin, which definitely helped my exhaustion. I approached the pile as cautiously as I could. It was indeed kids' clothing. It looked like there were both boy and girl pieces of clothing in the pile. I looked around into the woods, but I couldn't see much of anything in the darkness. I had my head on a swivel, worried that this was some kind of trap. I decided it was not my business to figure out what was going on, so I made my way back to my truck. Just then, I heard a crunch from the left. I whipped around, trying to see what was there. I stood there, waiting to hear another sound. After about 30 seconds, there was another crunch, but this time from the opposite side of the road. My survival instincts kicked in, and I sprinted towards the truck. I jumped into the front seat, but just before I slammed the door, I heard a child's scream ring out. I froze, my heart bursting out of my chest. I was caught in a crossroads. I wasn't going to fight some random people in a pitch-black woods, but I couldn't just abandon some helpless kids either. Before I could make a decision, another almost identical child's scream rang out. Without thinking, I turned the truck on and pointed its nose toward the spot in the woods where I heard the noise. My headlights lit up about 30 yards into the woods. There were 3 or 4 people, one of whom was holding a massive speaker. They ducked behind a couple trees as my truck lit them up, but I had exposed them for just enough time to make out what they were doing. They hid from the light before I could really make out any distinctive features, but I swear on my old man David's grave, they were holding up a speaker, trying to lure me into the woods with a fake kid screaming. I was just in shock. I just sat there, staring at the trees those people had just hid behind. I reached for my phone to call the police, but before I finished dialing, I heard a thump from the body of the truck. Someone had thrown something from the other direction. I was done. I turned back to face the road and slammed on the gas. As I sped off, I could make out a person on the other side of the road. He shouted something I couldn't understand before launching something at the truck that cracked the glass of my passenger side window. I drove the final hour in silence. I was too scared to process what had just happened, but there was no way in hell I was stopping to sleep in those woods. I completed my delivery and then knocked out. I must have slept for 10 hours straight. When I woke up, the first thing I did was call the police, who told me they'd investigate those woods and give me any updates. I then thought about the whole thing and how stupid I was to get out of my truck. I should have just minded my own business. But the thought of some kids being kidnapped or worse was just too much for me to ignore. To this day, I still have no idea what those people were trying to do. I don't know why they didn't just rush me when they had the chance, or what they were planning to do to me if I ran out in the woods after the kids screaming. In all my years of being a trucker, nothing has ever come close to being as strange or downright terrifying as this experience.
And honestly, you don't need anything stranger or more scarier than that in all the years of being a trucker, in my opinion. But that is just crazy, having those guys out in the woods with a speaker making fake kids screaming sounds and having kids clothes in the middle of the road. How sick is that? Like, there are some real sickos out there, and that's pretty sick. Honestly, using bait to get the soft side of people, that's just absolutely sick, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, he shouldn't have gotten out of the truck to begin with, for sure. And this just goes to show you that if there is anything strange like that, you just need to keep on going. Because, honestly, I completely understand that, if a kid is really in trouble, you would want to help. But more often than not, these types of situations are just traps. So you can't risk your life for someone you don't know, not even a kid, and that's just my opinion. And I hope I don't sound too cold-hearted for saying that, but if you get yourself into a bad situation where it is a trap, then you could potentially get robbed, mugged, or severely injured, or even murdered. So, do you really want to risk your life for something that is most likely a trap? Like, honestly, just call the police. That's the best thing you can do in that kind of situation, is keep driving and call the police. Don't feel guilty about stopping or anything like that. You're not being cold-hearted. You're saving your own life, honestly. So there are a lot of sick mother effers out there that will do that kind of stuff. But honestly, I thought this was a really creepy video, and I thought it was a great story, and I hope you enjoy the commentary and the music, and I will see you in the next video.